Welcome to our event, Making the Most of International Women's Day. We hope you enjoy this recording and that you find it inspiring as you think through how to make the most and connect with women and men on this day in 2026. We're delighted this evening to welcome our two guests, Anne Brown and Lois Adams. They're going to be sharing with us some of the things that they've been doing over the last few years in terms of engaging with International Women's Day. So, Lois, do you want to just introduce yourself first and then I'll hand over to you?
Great. Yeah, my name is Lois Adams. My first language is Welsh, and when I get excited, I talk very fast. So I hope you really understand me. Um, and I am employed by my local church to be a creative evangelist, or community artist, sometimes I call myself. And this is they send me to other churches around Wales, Welsh speaking and English speaking, to think about creative ways of evangelism, using the creative arts, using culture, using our imagination, to create opportunities for us to share Jesus in a different way, in a way that might engage different people and use different parts of our brains. So I've been doing this now over 4 years. And yeah, before that, I used to work with UCCF, working with creative students, and I'm an artist. Um, so words are not my strong point, but art is. So bear with me as I try to describe visual stuff. Yeah.
Thanks, Lois. It's really great to have you with us. I've looked on from afar as you've done some amazing things, not just International Women's Day, but Christmas, Easter. It's just been brilliant to watch you. So we're going to hear from you first, and our hope through this is not that each of us go away wanting to copy what you've done, but that we're inspired in our own context
Mm.
to maybe use the gifts and skills that we have or our friends have in our church to connect with this day. So, Lois, over to you.
Brilliant. I thought I would share four examples or stories that I've done in the past that, yeah, might inspire you. And these are all begged and borrowed and stolen from other churches and other countries. So, yeah, please adapt them as well to your church and your content. So the big project I was involved 2 years ago was Biblical Women during International Women's Day. And it was started off by Monmouth Baptist Church. And Monmouth Baptist Church has a sort of art group. They call themselves the Art Fringe Club, run by Berna and Amanda. So they already do this weekly meeting of doing different artwork and, yeah, creating and having, and they're very good at bringing non-Christians into the group as well. And they wanted to do something with this sort of group. And they had the idea of having, during the International Women's Day, an art exhibition on the theme of biblical women. This is so they did an open call, which is basically an invitation to any female to do artwork on another female in the Bible. Um, so um, so we had people from 12 years old to, I think, 70-year-old, and they were a real mixture of professional artists as well as hobbyists and some youngsters that never done art before, and it was their first time. So it was a real community exhibition. So it wasn't highbrow, white cube vibe. It was a very open, community-based exhibition. So we had young and the old, as well as non-Christians and Christians, all doing artwork inspired by another female story in the Bible. And this is a great way of getting artists who are on the fringes or maybe not Christians to open the Bible maybe for the first time. Um, and just to share you a little story, so a poet wanted to do a poem about to be engaged in this project. Um, And already somebody in the church had done a one-to-one with her. She was already on the fringes. But this project of looking at Lydia in the Bible really helped her to make that step to become a Christian. We were in Park one of the venues that had this on after Monmouth. And we had her on the artist panel, and she was supposed to represent a non-Christian or non-belief artist. And in the interview, she shared like, I think this is the first time I said it aloud, but I think I've become a Christian through this project, which is wonderful. But it's just a great way of opening the Bible and seeing stories, yes, to do artwork from, but as well, we know that the word, God's word, is powerful and can speak into the heart. Um, so yeah, so it's an open invitation for any artist to do put work in. And then the exhibition in Monmouth was held for just under a week. Um, and then a lot of other churches then was inspired by it. So he went on tour then. So he went to Parkart in Pontypridd, Ammanford, Aberystwyth, Pembroke, and Mold. Um, and all the churches did this slightly differently. But one part that made it even more effective was having events as part of the exhibition. So, exhibition is very visual, but having supportive events that sort of either shared the gospel really clearly, or having a more, events that deepen relationships. So, for example, during the exhibition, we would get questionnaires in. We would maybe offer a tour. I would do a tour around the exhibition on certain art. We might, some churches invited speakers in. So Anne Brown was one of them, talking about Jesus' encounters with women. Becca Nooms did an evangelistic talk, and we had as well artists. So we made sure in the exhibition there was non-Christian art, but as well Christian artists. So one of them was Faye Mayo, and she was able to share, did an artist talk, but also shared her artwork as well as her faith really beautifully. Um, we've had in the past workshops to be part of the exhibition. So in Monmouth, so in Mold, they invited the whole of Year 7 from the local school to come to see the exhibition. So I did the talk about how to appreciate and read art. And then they had a practical workshop where we gave them a story of 3 different women, had dramatic stories, and they had to read it and then come up with their own artwork on their reflections of that story. And then obviously we'll have like music or poetry night as part of it, or interviews as well with artists. So these events that go, yeah, complements the art exhibition, and creates, creates intrigue and brings people in, and you get good conversation. Um, so yeah, I told you a story about Catherine, who was one of the artists herself who became a Christian. Um, but then there's other stories of people coming to the exhibition and telling us, like, I didn't know about this woman. Artwork actually educated people, Christians and non-Christians, on these amazing characters that, are a testimony of God's character or Jesus's character. Um, and people came, it was educational, but as well inspiring, of people saying, like, I didn't know about this, so this is really moving. And there was I've got a lot of stories where people are really moved. So in Pembroke, there's a woman who came to the tour, and the last piece of artwork I did for the tour was a poem um, about the woman who bled for 12 years. And it's a very moving piece of poetry. And I just recited it. And you can see she was in tears. And the church lets me know then she had started to come back to church after that. So artwork sort of moving people towards God. Um, so yeah, and one of my best thing I think in the exhibition when touring it was comparing the Old Testament women and their stories with comparing it with Jesus's encounters with women. So there was one piece of artwork which was Solomon's family tree, and you opened it up, and there was five. Solomon had 500 wives and concubines, and they were and this artist had drawn each face, and they looked like sheep. It was just procession. And then you compare that to Jesus' encounter with women, the love, the dignity, and it's such a brilliant contradiction because you can say, actually, no, Jesus really valued us, really loved us of who he is, and gave us, yeah, yeah, wonderful stories. So yeah, that exhibition really showed that really clearly. So yeah, that I've talked a lot about that because it's been to various churches, and it has been successful, and maybe it might inspire you. The others ideas that I've been involved in is to have a practical workshop. Um, so I know because I'm a creative evangelist and an artist, all my ideas are very arty. So I know not all women like art and craft and flowers. There is something to say about having, sporty or, athletic or fitness sort of events as well. But I'm not in that field, so I can't give you any examples of that. Um, but the workshops I have been involved in is with pottery or glass painting, flower arrangements, of inviting women, your friends, to come for the evening to create something. And that's often when you create something, it's easier sometimes to talk. It builds that friendship. You create something at the end that they can go home with to remember. Um, and there's lots of links then between the visual art and the Bible. So the pottery, that the speaker can talk about us being broken vessels, or God creating us. Or knitting, there's a lot of that. God knitted us in the womb. Um, and like light and shadow. Anyway, there's so workshop of practical stuff. Um, then another idea I've encountered and helped with is a place called Park Arts in Pontypridd. And what they do to engage with their community and to love their community, they invite a local artist to show artwork in their space. So they have a little space. It's not massive, but it's a big space, yeah, a decent space. Um, and they asked an artist, would you like a solo show? And they've done that to women as well, saying, look, we really want to invest in our local community. We know you're an artist here locally. Would you like to show artwork? And this literally, like, I've had so many artists who are shocked that the church wants to love them, give them value, show their artwork, and really invest in their career. Like I've had women like last one was in November, but she was just like, oh, and she was thinking like, who's paying for this? Oh, no, no, the church. We want to love you. We want to love the community. And she just bowled over every time about the love, and felt heard as well, or felt appreciated. So that's a very simple thing of just inviting a local artist. And with that, obviously, you have to caveat, you have to make sure that the artwork is family friendly, if it's in a public space. And yeah, to just make them aware that it is a, a church space as well. So it has to work for both sides. But that's very simple, but really rewarding. Um, and then
All the hands
a
go
little story.
okay. Sorry, there
But
was a problem with the confirmation.
yeah, so a little story with that is so Park Arts, they they thought of what things in our community we can celebrate. So they noticed that there was a composer, so Morfydd Llwyn Owen in Pontypridd. She's a famous composer in Victorian times, but not very well heard about. But she's still the female composer in Wales that has the most composed pieces. She's still, even now. So they wanted to celebrate her. And even though Morfydd was brought up in church and they didn't know if she was a Christian or not, her art does deal with spiritual matters and the Christian faith. So they made like an awareness day for Morfydd, a local sort of female person of interest, of importance. But asked some Christian artists, myself and Leah, to do artwork reflecting on the spirituality of the work she was making. So yeah, just looking broader at their community and thinking, how can we link there? But the last idea I thought I would share with you is a very recent, hot off the press. So in Grangetown, a Grace Church, Grangetown in Cardiff, just before Easter, they had a concert and they called it Encounters with Jesus. And Abby Ashkew, she's a composer and very amazingly trained, really, really talented. So what they did was took 11 encounters with Jesus from the Gospel of Luke. And so each person, they had a dramatic reading of the Bible, of the story of how this person encountered Christ. And then Abby had composed lyrics and music and performed it after each sort of reading. And this music was very helped you reflect and ponder and meditate on each encounter. So it would be different characters. So let me see, from Simeon to Nicodemus to the Samaritan woman to the sick woman to Mary. And it was a really moving time. So you had the reading, so you had the story, and fair play to the church, they read it really well. And then you had Abby then on the piano, she had guitar, and she had, she's a very talented composer, performed it then, and performed it in such a way that really helped you think through what that person went through, that person's character, and how Jesus changed them through the words and the music. And it was a little concert, and I know she's for touring it. So that's something that your church might be interested in. But I can maybe answer more questions about that if you're interested. That's a lot from me. I've just spewed everything out. Looking forward to hear your questions.
Thank you, Lois. That was amazing, and really warm welcome to the people that have made it into our Zoom tonight. If you missed some of what Lois was saying, you can catch up afterwards or just ask her questions now. So please feel free to put questions in the chat. Lois is a community evangelist in Wales and uses her gifts and skills as an artist to help churches engage with different things through the year. And it's great to hear from you, Lois. So we'll hear from Anne next, and then we'll have a chance to ask you questions as well afterwards, Lois. So please do put questions in the chat for Lois or for Anne as she's speaking. And it's great to have you with us.
Thank you.
Let me just add you in. And it'd be really nice to hear just a little bit about you before you share your different ways in which you've engaged with International Women's Day.
Well, I never know what to say about myself, actually. I've been involved in evangelistic events with students and women for quite a long time, wrote a book, Apology to Women, Christian Images of the Female Sex. And I think that's when I discovered, actually, I know you've had a lot of sessions about finding your voice. And I think that it was when I was writing that and talking about some of the chapters that I was writing. For instance, Mary Magdalene was a topic I spoke on quite a bit. And I realized, for instance, I did it in an art centre in Cardiff. And I had an audience that was largely, as far as I knew, non-Christian, that were interested in the whole history of Mary Magdalene and the artwork that surrounded her. And I realized that using art opened us up the way to share the gospel and the Bible with a whole lot of people that never set foot in church. So that's me. Why have I been involved in International Women's Day was a question Nay asked me. And I've been involved largely because the themes are an opportunity to bring a Christian perspective to contemporary issues of real significance to women. It's a really great bridge builder. For example, if we go back 2 years, and I was involved in a couple of the exhibitions and events that Lois mentioned. And that year, the International Women's Day theme was embracing equity. And they defined it as challenging gender stereotypes, calling out discrimination, drawing attention to bias, and seeking out inclusion. Now, I don't know if you can think of anybody who exemplifies all those characteristics, but I think it could be a description of Jesus. When he walked the earth, Jesus fully embraced equity in the way he treated women. For instance, it's evident in the conversation with the Samaritan woman in John 4 that really took the disciples by surprise. And telling her story and the stories of other women's encounters with Jesus is a really powerful apologetic. And I've realized recently that I think I've begun to lose sight of that. And, you know, I've been challenged by this book that you've been reading recently. And Jeremy talks about simply telling Bible stories. I was in the Netherlands recently and talking about the resurrection and women being the first witnesses to the resurrection and how significant that was. And afterwards, a young Pakistani woman came up. She was an asylum seeker in the Netherlands, and she was just blown away by it. She was absolutely ecstatic, realizing for the first time the significance of it, that women were there first, and that, you know, no man could possibly have made a story in the first century where women got there first. So, you know, we really need to tell these stories over and over. And what we've been trying to do in these exhibitions is to fuse the visual and the verbal to creatively tell the stories in ways that will intrigue people and resonate with them. Because time and again, Jesus upended first century expectations in the ways that he allowed women to take to the road and follow him, the way he encouraged Mary of Bethany for taking the male role of a disciple, sitting at his feet, the way he reached out to the marginal and disabled. All the way through his ministry, women are involved in the central events. And, you know, I think about Josephine Butler, who in 1873 was talking in Cambridge to a group of then all male undergraduate students. And she was talking about the double moral standards in society. And she said, but there stands on the pages of history one marked exception, and one alone, as far as I know, and that is Christ. And she was absolutely right. And we just got to keep saying it and saying it differently and in ways that really resonate. International Women's Day is a wonderful way to celebrate women's creativity and communicate the gospel creatively. Why is it good to use the creative arts, and not necessarily just the visual, but all of them? Literature, poetry, music, drama, and not necessarily fine arts. I mean, I was very touched in Pembroke when an older lady arrived when we were putting up the exhibition, and she came in with, she had something wrapped in tissue paper, and then she unwrapped it, and it was the most exquisite piece of knitting, and she'd won prizes for this piece of knitting. And she was very modest about it. She said, well, I can't draw, I can't paint or anything like that, but could I, could this be in the exhibition? And could it be Dorcas? Could it represent Dorcas? And I said, yes, of course. That's wonderful. And it was great because, you know, then her family and friends came to see it. And, you know, I think when we, as Lois said, we need to think about the skills and the communities that we're in. In Pembroke, there was one woman who was putting the exhibition together. She'd got together a group that were making art together. She was the only trained artist there, but she got them making artwork collaboratively. One of the things they did was make collage. I was with her this afternoon and picked up some of the pieces that were used originally, and then they were all put together with profiles on top, and they were to represent the nameless women of the Bible, that each woman did a square of different colors, and then they put different profiles on top. So I've lost my train of thought. What else was I going to say?
You're saying about collaboration.
Yes, collaboration. Because making art together, as Lois said, creativity is a great way for encouraging friendships, encouraging dialogue and conversation. But the same is true when you have the exhibition. Lois talked about all the conversations she had. I know of one conversation that took place looking at Faye Mayo's wonderful piece that she made. If Lois has it afterwards, she could probably share her screen and show it. Faye makes the most wonderful ceramics like this. This is one of her bowls, but she made this wonderful piece, especially for the exhibition in Monmouth, but then it travelled. It was a vessel, rough on the outside like that, as we all are, rough but fragile, and then these beautiful colours inside representing the way that we're made new and refreshed and washed and clean as coming to Christ. And what she'd done in this piece that she called Eternal Waters was, it was vaguely the shape of a woman. It represented the woman in John 4. But then in the inside of it, this wonderful rippling script went down through the glaze. And it was quite difficult to read, but it was the verse about living water that will be, I always forget the verse, well of water springing up to eternal life. And there was a young artist looking into this, trying to read it. And someone I know was standing next to her and said, can you see what it says? And she read it. And then she said, what does it mean? I don't know what it means. And the person talking to her was able to say, well, it's the story, and just told her what it meant. So having an artwork like that generates questions and conversation and dialogue is wonderful. Another one that generated great conversation was this one by Sophie Killingly. She said no, and that is that's Vashti from Esther's story. So I would say use skills that you've got, but just have a go. Don't try to be too ambitious. Get as much support as you can, and then go for it. Okay.
And thank you. That's just a wealth of inspiration and ideas. There's so much there.
I'm sure I've missed some.
No, I don't think you have. Just so much thinking about how we view the Bible stories and then how we communicate them. It's just wonderful. So
I
huge
tell you
thanks,
what, I
Anne.
didn't mention photography, because
Oh, please do go for it, Anne. We've got time. Go for it.
Yeah, if you haven't got artists, fine artists or people making installations, these days everybody's a photographer. So you can quite easily have photography exhibitions on a theme, and people love looking at them. Yeah, so that's the one I'd mention. I mean, I keep throwing this out. This is particularly to do with, but somebody could do one. Yeah, why not a woman do something on Luke's Gospel for International Women's Day in photographs? That'd be brilliant. Yeah, I was thinking of that because my son and another guy did an exhibition once called 66, Portrait of a Book. And they had one photograph for every book of the Bible, and had an exhibition in the Norwegian church in Cardiff, which is now an exhibition space. But they got, well, what happened was the exhibition opened just after that terrible shooting in Norway. And so anybody that felt any sympathy for Norway that day went to the Norwegian church. So they had a huge number going through their exhibition, and intrigued by them because they weren't the normal sort of photographs, and they had one verse from each book of the Bible, but even the verse was quite difficult to decipher. So it made people think and puzzle over them. Yeah. Okay, I'll stop there.
Thanks, Anne. So I'm going to hand over to Anna, who is going to lead our time of question and answer. Anna, over to you.
Well, I'm beginning to burst already, but if somebody else has got a question that they'd like to lead off with, please shout. But otherwise, I've got several. If you'd like to ask a question, just perhaps raise your hand. But I mean, we're in a small group, so you can just dive in and shout loudly and we'll let you speak. But my immediate question for Anne, just hearing on the photography, I mean, the whole thing's absolutely fascinating, and I'm not a great artist myself, so I'm gonna speak on behalf of those who know very little about art, but are inspired by what you've both said this evening. But so just for an example, with the photography thing, which I can see how that could be really accessible to lots of different people, and in the community where I live, where there's very little art around at all, and people are very unskilled in art, but there is an interest, and we do quite a lot with art actually as a church. But with photography, I can't imagine what you would take photos of that would connect to scripture. So you were suggesting, you could go through Luke's Gospel or something, but what would the photos actually be of, if you see what I mean?
Yeah. If you give me your address afterwards, I'll dig out a catalogue that they did and send you one.
Be interested.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the Well, yeah, they had. I mean, they were intriguing. There's one that I've shown quite a bit, which is a shot of a staircase in. It's basically an almost derelict building, and then it's got a bit of graffiti on the wall saying only this way or something. And I said, what do you? But anyway, it's Revelation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay.
they're not obvious at all. That's the
Yeah.
beauty of them.
Yes.
So you don't need to have a photograph of a woman who looks like
Mm.
Mary in order to talk about Mary.
No.
But perhaps an aspect of the story.
There was an artist in residence in Glasgow, in what's the big church at the Tron? Is it the Tron? And what he did was paint his way through Luke's Gospel, and he did one painting for every book, and they were amazing paintings. But he painted people in the congregation and linked them to different passages. So, for instance, the first one for Mary was for Ashte, who was an asylum seeker, and looked very Middle Eastern. And he posed her in the big cemetery outside Glasgow, and she was carrying lilies. So it was sort of played on all the art history of way Mary is represented, she's going to bear a child who's going to die, so it was very, very clever. I think with photographs could be produced to represent, but I mean, you could take another theme. It doesn't have to be. You could just, if you just wanted to celebrate women, you could just get women doing selfies of themselves and what do they say about me? How do I want the world to see me? And I know that Jodie Hines did one once up in Scotland for a university mission, and got students taking photographs, and they had a great exhibition about self, who am I, identity.
Yeah, having a broader, so each year, International Women's Day have a different hashtag. So embrace equality. This year was something power, was it?
It was action, wasn't it?
Yeah, speed action. So you can use that hashtag because they're usually quite broad.
And where do you find such things, hashtags like that for International Women's
Day? They announce it in November.
Okay.
So you've got about 4 months to prepare then. So about mid-November. This year it was a bit early, but yeah, they announce it then.
And is there a website that?
Yes.
Where that's?
Yes. Yeah.
So if you go to International Women's Day, just Google that, it'll come. And then in that website, they share the theme of the year. But also they really love engaging with other people. So they often have stories about women with specific themes of that year. And some of them involved, artists as well. So by having your event on that same theme, you can use the same hashtag and you'll never know. They probably pick it up, and can retweet it as well. Or share it also. So it's a way of engaging because they really want people to engage with them. So we can say, look, yeah, we are engaging with this theme. This theme is interesting.
One thing I didn't mention too is that one of the people that sent a beautiful piece of work for an exhibition was of a tablecloth, an embroidered tablecloth, and it was embroidered with a place setting for women in the Bible. But you could have domestic art because for centuries that's been women's main outlet, has been. And the woman who sent that tablecloth she's had an initiative of getting women to embroider dusters. and and exhibit those. So I mean, you could have something like that in a church, or a tea towel or something like that.
Yeah.
Do something quite different.
The theme I'm doing for a church this summer is the theme is what is your creativity? So it's really broad. So from singing to poetry to cooking to knitting, they'll have. So it's really broad. But then I've worked with others on the theme of is it finished? Question mark. So a quote, it is finished on the cross, but having a question like is it finished? Or the theme in the beginning, dot dot dot. Green, that has been another theme. And yeah, like several, so they're broad enough to get people intriguing. So like biblical women, even though it was intriguing, it was very direct. It says like biblical women,
Yes.
but it brought its own audience. So it
Yeah, but
depends on, yeah,
they did make it relevant to the theme because
yeah,
it was biblical women equity ? So
yeah.
it took up the International Women's Day theme in that way.
Yeah. Another church did belonging as well. That was interesting. Theme of belonging. Yeah.
So Nay's posted a question on the chat, which I'm sure represents lots of people, including myself. We've never done anything like this before at our church. We have a women's group. How do you persuade others to make the most of this day? Any suggestions?
What I usually do is it's really hard to convince somebody if they haven't tasted it themselves. So for example, there's some churches that want to do some creative evangelism up in North. But they can't get quite, find it hard to engage and sell the idea. So I'm telling them, look, there's another church just down the road from you who is doing an art exhibition on this theme. They say, come, come and see it for yourself, taste it, have a look. So yeah, I think that's because when they taste it and see like, oh man, like I can imagine myself bringing friends to this. I can imagine myself like able to advertise this or understand how the gospel gets a clear way and it starts discussion or like deeper discussion with my friends. They can imagine themselves there when they're there. It's much harder. But if nothing is around your area that is something that you want to do, I have a little website called EOS Collective .art, where I just share where other churches have done, put photos in. I tried to get churches to do a little like quotes or stories about how they found this out to be themselves. Thank you, Nate. Nate's just put it on the chat. So yeah, have a look through that. But I know, Passion of Evangelism, you as well share stories of what other people have done. So yeah, sharing pictures and sharing stories as well is a good way if you can't physically go there. And yeah, like sort of gossip in a good way. that's what happens in Wales anyway. Because you're like, oh, have you heard that church has done this? Oh, and then he sort of comes with, yeah. I'm sure Anne has more thoughts.
What about do you have any books or places that you would recommend where we can look at women in the Bible that you've particularly enjoyed or found engaging yourself to kind of help us get inspired about just the biblical women?
Well, I think the book that you read recently in Passion for the Evangelism, Jesus Through the Eyes of Women, is brilliant. That's particularly good at looking in a fresh way.
Yeah. Anne Brown's book.
Well,
Was
it's a
the
bit
that
old
called
now.
again,
It's a
Anne?
bit dated. It's a bit dated now.
What was that called again, Anne?
Apology to Women. I don't think you'll find it. It's been out of print for a while,
Oh.
but you know, I think if you read the Bible stories too, when you say what photographs to take, I was talking to this friend this afternoon who's brilliant at illustrating Bible stories, but she's quirky and she looks at them different ways, you know. And I was just saying about the woman at the well, I haven't ever seen a painting of the last bit of the story where she leaves her water jug and rushes back into the town. Which, you know, and I think there you are, there's a photograph, just a water jar. What happened to her was life changing. The very purpose for going there, she abandoned and went rushing back to tell him who she'd met. And, you know, and you think of the Syrophoenician woman bargaining with Jesus so that he would respond, and talking about, you know, the dog eating crumbs under the table. Well, you could have a picture of a dog eating, you know, photograph of a dog eating crumbs. That's you know, you don't have to have the whole story. You can go in at an angle and the bits that nobody is bothered with.
And it doesn't have to be illustrative either.
No,
at all.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Has anyone else got questions before I carry on? Okay, I've got another question because of my context here, but it may well apply to lots of other places as well. Our context is very low literacy, so it's very difficult to get people to read portions of scripture for themselves. And I think most church members would find it very difficult to go looking in the scripture for stories because they find reading difficult. So any thoughts about how to approach International Women's Day in a way that that it's accessible to those who are not arty and not particularly literate either? Is that maybe a challenging question?
Yeah.
Like with the arts, there must be a way.
Yeah. Well, I think back to my workshop ideas of physically making,
Yes.
because I'm a what's the posh word? Kinesthetic learner, isn't it? So there's a visual learner, there's a audio learner, and there's like hands learner. And I definitely learn by making and doing it.
Yes. So you mentioned a few, I took some notes of a few really lovely connections that I'd never thought of, because our church do loads of creative stuff with our hands all the time. We do workshops and things all the time at a very basic level. Sometimes it's knitting or whatever, but lots of different kinds of things. But we've never really, other than at Easter and Christmas, made connections between those creative things and scriptures. And you mentioned pottery, which there's so much about pottery. Knitting in the womb, and you said light and shadow, and suddenly my mind's going, oh my goodness, there's so many things. Have you got any more like that, just ideas of how those things can connect, those simple?
So Christmas is a good one, because it's thematic already. We've had telling the Easter through art. So telling the Easter story, but through artworks. So telling story, but with so that's like a narrative, more things. I think like, because the Bible in itself is a piece of artwork, in a sense of there's poetry, there's lamentations, there's historical, there's stories, there's parables. We've what I've done in the past is telling Jesus's parables by shadow puppetry. So not like weird puppetry, but a shadow. So it's a Japanese form. So it's about
done shadow puppetry
oh,
here.
great, yeah. And then we've narrated the stories already on audio with so we have my sister actually is a really good composer, so she put sound effects. So the story
Yeah.
really comes alive, even though it's just reading the Bible. The Bible is not just a very boring. It's narrated well with different voices for different characters, with sound effects of whatever story it is. So as they come to understand the story, but in a audio, visual, and they can do
Yeah.
the shadow puppets, isn't it? And another one we've done is learning to animate, but animate Jesus'
thinking.
stories.
Yeah, I was thinking.
So that's a good one, because to animate something, so especially stop motion, you have to talk, okay, how did Jesus feel here? What kind of movements or facial, so you really go into the story and you come to understand the motivation of all the different characters, as well as making it, and then they have something to show as well. So we had like sort of a opening night with showing the animation at the end. So that's a really great of like really come to know the we did so we did the parables, but I think we did just Jesus's stories as well, because we wanted them to come to know Jesus's character. And yeah, the process of animation lends itself well to come to know a person really well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the stop motion animation, I'm really ignorant, but I mean, I have seen it done because my kids used to do it when they were little.
Yeah.
Do you do it with your phone? Can you do it on your phone?
Yes, yeah. Um,
Is it
so
like an app to download or
so
something?
there's lots of many apps, and so there's apps available, or even just with your camera and put it on something as simple as iMovies. Um, so I'm part of a network called Morphe Arts. It's for Christians in the creative arts. And usually what I do is try to plug in a Christian artist who can go to the church then to do an animation course with them. So there's some skill based as well. So there's a group up in Scotland, Wales, and London. So it's a way of or even if you have artists or people that have certain skills, how can you use them who are already plugged into church and use their skills to pass on to others? So I often, so yeah, often, so we have like 2 or 3 really good animators in the Morphe network in Wales. So if that happens, I can animate, but I'm not very good. They're more experts, so I can bring them in a little bit to help out. Yeah.
And have you, this question for both of you, when you've been running these International Women's Day events specifically, because that's kind of what we're focusing on, are there things that you've become aware of as you've done it that's kind of an expectation or anything about International Women's Day, or an awareness of what other people are doing for that day and how you kind of fit into that or complement what else is going on?
So the website is really good for that, the International
is.
Women's Day website. So there'll be regional sort of groups, where things are happening officially from International Women's Day sort of core. And then there's a page how you can engage, and they just tell you. So it's really
that there is an expectation that any money that's made, that you contribute to a charity that is to help women. You can choose the charity. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be their choice. But so that is one expectation.
Okay. Charity that supports women specifically. Okay.
And there should be some connection to their theme, but when you look at it, they're often very tenuous, the links to the theme. But yeah.
Okay, that's really helpful to know that.
I think one thing I'd say is it's great to involve non-Christians, but if you do that, you do need to if it's an exhibition and it's too open-ended, you do need to be careful you set your parameters so you don't end up with very mixed messaging if, you know, non-Christians want to submit something that you think is really very inappropriate. So
have you got models of what you know, guidance you've given out before, or you know?
Well, Lois has had it, I think, on your website, didn't you?
Yeah.
Of, I mean, when the original one that set off, they spent a long time going through what the parameters should be, what work. So it had to be responding to a biblical woman. It wasn't just somebody doing something very subjective. Yeah, but I didn't have any part in that. It was Berna and Amanda.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
have you ever had an experience of something very negative of somebody then doing something that's really vile about Jesus
Oh yeah.
or women?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it depends on what is the purpose of the exhibition. So for example, so you can copy and paste this from a website. So I have like terms and conditions, so that allows me and another curator in the church to refuse any work that doesn't fit the brief or doesn't seem suitable for the space. So you have just that sort of just, insurance, or, say, yeah. You can have a look. It's in the collaborate in my website. But also, like, so with, for example, a place up in North Wales in Pwllheli, I did the theme in the beginning with them, and their policy is we actually want everybody to show their artwork. We really want to have the child and the person who is a character and putting some, and nothing, in that case we didn't have anything that was too disturbing, but we just embraced everybody. But then in other churches we've had to say, thank you for putting your application in. I value your work, but I don't think it's a fit for this exhibition, because behind each art there is a person, and that person is often trying to find meaning, trying to express themselves. So to see them as people, and the way the church refuses tells a lot about their love for that person as well. So we've had, so in Cardiff we had quite a big experience, and we had to, I even said in the brief, we have minimum amount of space to show work. So we have to say no to a lot of good artwork as well. But it's a way of showing like, no, we love you. Sorry we didn't fit this time, but please try again next year. Or even, saying, so critical feedback, so the place that I was exhibiting was a cafe as well, and there's a lot of children coming there. So I could say like, sorry, we have to make sure that the artwork is not 18. Yeah. And family friendly. But they understand that like artists get a lot of refusals, so they're used to having very cold refusals. So actually to show that you really do want to show them, but yeah, the way you refuse says a lot.
Thank you, that's really helpful. And I can keep going for quite a long time, so you need to cut me short now. But what about how long do you think is the optimum time to have an exhibition up for? If we just did it for International Women's Day, is that too short? Is it better to have things hanging for a week, or any thoughts about that?
Usually, I have these exhibition walls that I tour with me. So there's we don't use the church's walls at all. They're these freestanding walls. Um, and I say minimum 3 days because it's such a time gathering artists, and they've put time in making these things as well. So the longer the better. So Park Art, they have it for a month. Cardiff had it for 3 months, but usually it's a week. most churches do a week, so Sunday to a Sunday vibe. And as well, because it's a visual thing that people have to come into the church, more time and more opportunities for people to come in, the better. And as well, having that exhibition punched up by events for people to have an excuse to come as well. So, the opening night is a great way, get the press in, invite the mayor, the local MP, it's an opening event. It's a very easy, and as well, people know what to expect. Well, they're less like sometimes if they go to a church, they don't know what to expect, what's going to be the format, and they're not sure. But with the opening view or opening event, it's an easier invite. They know they're just going to be drinks and maybe some speeches and an interview and seeing art. It's a even if you go to a concert, they sort of know what to expect. So it's an easy invite. So to have those things, and then
I think a week is pretty good, and then you can top and tail it with Sunday services, which are orientated around women as well.
Yeah, and that's what Monmouth did really well. So Berna and Amanda was talking to the pastor, Jonathan, so he could top and tail the Sundays to bringing up and then finishing with knowing there might be non-Christians coming to that service and making very like specific sort of I can't remember what woman in the Bible he chose, but it was very on theme. Especially the green as well. I know they were leading up to the Sunday, so they wanted to make the Sunday the crescendo of the outreach week, and it was on the theme of green. So that Sunday they did the gardens of the Bible, so looking at Genesis and then looking at Revelation. Yeah, it's worth thinking through, like, how do you bring people, if they're interested, how do you keep on their interest and for them to engage with more things that the church is doing?
Yeah, that's
Thank you so much. Has
So,
anybody else got a
one
question?
thing we didn't say was that we did have Gospels, of course.
Oh yeah.
And we had Luke's Gospel, which we called the Gospel for Women, because there are so many episodes in it that just talk about women. And lots of Gospels were taken.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you,
Yeah,
everybody, so much.
I just know there's a question in the comment, is it?
Oh, have I missed one? Oh, Paula, she's made a comment. A few of my ideas, no questions, sorry, some great ideas. A lot of international women in our church, hoping to do something a bit more international, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's a Sunday. Yeah, it is a Sunday. And there's a podcast called Women Meet Jesus Meets. It sounds good. Spoken word, someone being the character. Yeah, great ideas. Thank you, Paula. Nay, do you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, thank you. Well, huge thanks, Anne and Lois, for being with us this evening. It's been so good, hasn't it, to hear some different ideas that have happened and be inspired. I've just been thinking lots about who I can get involved from my church, and I mean, it's unique that it's a Sunday, isn't it? And it's a challenge but an opportunity at the same time. So my brain is whirring. What can we do in Southampton that fits us and is suitable for the women in our church? Thank you, Paula and Ella, for joining us, and Helen that was here earlier. I'm sorry for the disaster with the link. We're hoping most people will catch up with this later. And I'm wondering if maybe reconvening in November when the International Women's Day theme comes out might be a good idea to come back together with our plans and thoughts. Paula, I know you've done a bit for the last few years, so it'd be great to hear from you too, maybe later on. So thank you so much for joining us. Please find out more about Passion for Evangelism through our website, pfewomen.co.uk. We'd love to hear from you. We've got some more training and mentoring coming up The next one is our podcasting greenhouse in June, where you can learn how to create a evangelistic podcast for your friends. We've got 2 trainers from the Plumline podcast joining us for that. And then in the autumn, we've got spoken word poetry greenhouse and 2 Finding Your Voice events in Edinburgh and London. So we'd love to meet you at those. But thank you, Anne and Lois, so much for your time this evening. We're so grateful for all that you've
Great
given
to
us.
be with you.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you so
thank
much.
you.
Well,
Pleasure.
great to be with you.